After watching this week's episode of Somali and the Forest Spirit, I think it's pretty clear why the end of the Golem and Somali's journey is so just frightening. Because, at least for me, for the longest time, the main reason that I've been worried is that it seems like the Golem will in fact die. And even if he gets her to somewhere safe, it's just going to be heartbreaking, right? Because they're going to have to part ways, and how will someone at such a young age, especially after being chained up when he originally found her, like how would she deal with that and be able to move on with their life? But after this week's episode, I think it really does highlight that it's not even just about the heartbreak that's going to happen when the inevitable does happen. It's also that without the Golem around, will she truly be safe, not only in a world that eats and hunts humans, but in a world that's full of such dangerous creatures that you really do need to have an almost mechanical body to survive, as seen by the end of the episode. And had the Golem not been there, even the witches couldn't stop a magical fish that was trying to eat books and then a little girl. And that's a really frightening but exciting feeling, I have to say, that it still is finding new ways to make the understanding that you kind of know where the end is going to go, especially when you have a human who's basically on a time limit, and then you also have a Golem who's on a time limit. It feels like we know the end before we've even seen it, but there's always that potential of a twist that we can't see coming. But to have something that just still finds ways to rub salt into our wounds, that it feels like the wound can never properly heal, it keeps every single episode not only feeling magical and wholesome, but also so depressing and just anxiety-filled that it's just honestly the perfect adventure for this winter 2020 season. The first half of this episode was definitely on the sweeter side, but also had that little darker undertone that I definitely enjoyed. I mean, I'm not surprised that we have like Hatora and Uzui and things like that. They weren't going to stick around forever. I was hoping maybe for another episode or two, but it's understandable that they've reached the end of the desert, so it's understandable that they're going to part ways, as their two goals, they don't really align. They have to find a cure for a human, and then they also have to find humans themselves. Even though you might be able to argue, well, maybe the cure for humans could be found with humans, so they should stick together. It does make sense to separate, because it kind of feels like, based on how long they have been searching, they understand that they need to go in one direction, the other have to go into a different direction. But it still was sad to see that they did have to part ways, but I'm glad it wasn't on a sad note. At least for the girls, they definitely felt like they were going to reunite one day, where with the dads, they understood that, yeah, their time limit is running out. And it's kind of interesting, as I kind of just assumed that Hitor assumed that the Golem was going to just die eventually, but the fact that he was under the impression that he would have years with Somali, it really was a sad moment, because the Golem's like, yeah, I got 7 days left? It's not good. There is a very short time limit, and possibly a shorter time limit than the human who's coughing up blood, and that's just so heartbreaking, because both of these dads are basically promising that they'll be together with their daughters forever, but they both know that it's a lie for their own benefit. But we're in a world where there is so much unknown, and even though we understand that there's humans, something that we can recognize, with all the creatures and magic and wonders that we do see, there's always that hope of what if. And that what if, I'm not actually expecting to come to fruition. I'm expecting both of these dads are going to die, but that even 0.1% chance that they could find a cure for Hatora, find a cure for the Golem, or rebuild the Golem in a new body but have the same memories or personality. Just, there's always that what if, and I love that these girls kind of represent that there is going to be a good end, but then the dads represent, they understand logically they're going to die, but even if they can hold on for a little bit longer, get to spend more time with their girls, or just find them a good and protective home, like that's all that matters to them, where with the others, they're kind of in that optimistic childlike wonder where nothing can ever truly go wrong. And that's why that whole goodbye sequence, it had a mixture of feelings for me. On one hand, it was cute and adorable and wholesome, but then on the other hand, I understood the lie underneath the truth, and it made it all the more painful. But I was like, alright, I mean, even though it's sad, even though they're parting ways, at the very least, we're going on a new adventure, and they immediately showed us wonders that I couldn't even predict. I mean, the witches' lair and just their world is so beautiful. I mean, I don't think many people probably expected witches, honestly. Like, weird mythological and just weird looking animalistic creatures, sure, but witches was something that wasn't on the table, at least from my point of view, and I was really happy to see it. I'm glad they weren't like feeding people into a cauldron and eating them and doing some weird chants. It was literally just another village, but it was all about the collective research, and I thought it was interesting how they took the idea of witches from pretty much any tale, but then they applied it that there's certain witches that go out and collect books, and then the others who basically sort and basically will teach people, and the way that they survive is the whole book collecting, that's something they do by instinct. The way they make their money is just by using their knowledge to make medicines and food and things like that. And it's nice to see a more peaceful take on witches rather than the casting spells left and right to manipulate humanity or things like that. Now, maybe they had done that in their past, sure, but I mean, nice to see such a beautiful location, how Somali was just eating her fill. Every which direction, there was someone trying to sell something, and I just thought it was so adorable. To then seeing probably my favorite scenery that we've seen in the show to date, the library. I mean, as soon as you see how much detail is put in just the bookshelves, it really did feel like a real location. Even though it was obviously a lot more colorful and vibrant than something that we typically see, it definitely felt hand-painted and things like that. It still felt like something that felt so full of life, and that wasn't just like a book was a red color or a brown color or a green color just to make it, feel a little different. And honestly made it feel like a world full of life, and seeing these witches interact with them, and then you see these two sisters who had such amazing chemistry and personalities. It just made this episode a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for me. Because you have one who's definitely on the stricter side, but, still a very lovable, and you can see the personality really radiate this loving aura. But then you see the other who's just like, holy shit, a golem just bouncing every which direction, probably will get very well along with Somali. And it was just really nice to see that chemistry, because you kind of felt like, holy shit, we're actually going to see something that will actually lead to possibly a brighter future. And then it all goes to shit. This was an interesting point, though, because it kind of feels like that's kind of how the show works, is it feels like, okay, we're going in one direction, either where they went was pointless or their solution was not going to have a happy ending. And to see how basically they have this like idea of fish that pretty much go after literature, and then the witches have to use their own magic to combat it, and how it's like, okay, the book's clearly going to get eaten, and then immediately I let my guard down. I was like, okay, clearly it's not going to get eaten, it's going to be okay. And then to see what they designed, it was so amazing. I love how they can make something feel so menacing that really is just a fish floating in the sky. But then you see like, okay, not only is this bad because Somali might get hurt, but the book that probably has the only answers is going to be destroyed. There's no way that they're going to get out of that unscathed, especially seen by like their little bird magic and flower magic was doing jack shit. The most shocking part of this entire episode was to see that the golem actually has ridiculous defense. I mean, to see his like harpy wings come out and just stab after he gets so shattered was so badass and just disappointing wrapped up in one. It was disappointing because he took a beating. It's bad enough that like every day he cracks or like a scale will fall off or a shell will fall off, whatever you want to call it. But to see how much damage he took on his arm, eventually he's just going to lose an arm. Like, I feel like his arm's just going to fall off one of these episodes because he's took such a beating. But to see how badass of a combat ability he did have, like, just imagining, had he met Somali 100 years earlier, there really would be no threat to what he was dealing with, because anything that came into contact with him, he could scan and analyze and use his badass defense mechanism to probably keep her safe for her entire life. But the fact that he's on such a death's doorstep right now, even though he's still a badass, it clearly is like, if he takes probably 1, 2, maybe 3 more just incredible forces such as that fish, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? He might not be able to move anymore. And the fact that still the only thing that he cares about is if she's safe. He's not that aggressive dad anymore. He's not like, oh my god, I'm disappointed. He's like, as long as you're safe, that's all that matters. But as everyone can recognize, Somali, the witches, like, that didn't look good. I mean, he was literally shattering. And the fact that they're still finding new ways to just shock me with its brutality, whether they're applying it to Somali almost getting killed, or the golem just taking a beating that both looked badass, but also so disappointing because we realized how much that had to have hurt him. Obviously, golems don't have a pain sensor, but it is clear that if he takes too much damage, his body will break apart sooner than that 300-day limit that he still has. And that's holy shit. Like, even just thinking about the possibility that if he takes more damage than he should, could that day counter get cut down even more? Could he have lost a few days just by taking that blow from the fish? Like, it's something that it gets your mind racing, both on a good and positive note, but also a disappointing and negative note. And that negativity is a positive, just in a very painful way. And this show just continues to blow me away. I just love the dynamic. I love how, even though I feel like every time I see these characters, whether it's a family in an inn, or we see these travelers, I feel like I want them to stick together forever for this entire journey. But on the other hand, I want them to separate so we can see a new wonder, see a new set of characters. And I thought, after the inn, these are the best characters. I want to see them continue to interact with them. Okay, then we got the traveler. And that was such a brutal and amazing story. I wanted that to just continue. And then even though it was painful to see them separate, I was so happy to once again see these two witch sisters who already have my attention and just want to see where they're going to go with their banter, and also how they're going to link up with the head librarian, the head witch, and what wonders she might know. I kind of feel like there's going to be another revelation that Somali is most definitely a human based on the book that she read, and it'll be interesting to see what a witch who knows what a human is would do. Feed her to a cauldron or want to help save her. I mean, there's just so much potential, both magical, positive, but also disastrous and negative, and that has me incredibly excited about the future. I mean, this episode I assumed was going to be pretty good, and the first half definitely played out to a pretty familiar expectation. I was like, okay, yep, parting ways, the wholesome, the just dramatic, that makes sense. But the second half with witches, I did not see coming, and for that, it was definitely a phenomenal episode to say the least. I'm loving my time with Somali and the Forest Spirit, but as always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, be it for source material readers, anime originals. What did you think of the witches and the parting scene? Did it play with your emotions like it did for me? Let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.